Today, I'm talking with Simon Reindl. We talked about the gamification of the Boy Scouts, growing up without cameras in our pockets, and how scarcity made us more mindful. I'm Inge Van Den Bussche from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it. Hello everyone, and hello with me I have Simon. Is that how I should pronounce your name?
Yes, Simon Reindl.
Simon Reindl. I try to ask because it's, with an audience all around the world, it's sometimes a little bit different. Now, your name actually in Dutch, it's actually very similar pronounced. So that's not that hard, but in some languages and with some nouns names, it's actually sometimes a little bit harder. And I want to show, before we jump into all the questions, I want to show a little bit. I'm here in Belgium, so in Drongen or in Ghent, and let's move, or let's ask Google to move, and we're going to the UK in Swindon, if I'm correct.
That's it, yeah.
And the time on my side, it's just a couple of minutes before 8. And what's the time on your side?
It's 1 hour earlier, so a couple of minutes before 7.
Exactly. So that's a little bit how we roll. And we're not that far away, but still already a time zone away, I would say. That's a little bit on how this works. Simon, for the people that don't know you, before we jump into the questions, could you give a small introduction about yourself?
Yes, thank you. My name's Simon Reindl. I'm an Agile coach, professional Scrum trainer. Many moons ago, I was a software engineer. I've been various things in my career, and that was in software engineering that I discovered Agile. In 2010, I became the first professional Scrum trainer in the UK with Scrum.org. And since then, training, coaching, consulting, helping people try and get the hang of this Agile thing. Father, 2 kids. I'm an Australian married to a Welsh woman living in England. So,
okay, lots of different kind of things already in there. I like that. Let's jump to that very first question. What is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you are?
Reflecting on this, I think growing up in far north Queensland, growing up in a rural place and having that opportunity to explore and be reliant helps build a lot of skills. So growing up around farms, around farmers, my father was a contract cane harvester, and he was amazing. Like, he could do anything with metal and wood. Like, he could make anything. And just learning that resilience, that reliance, and also planning, because if you want to head away from a lot of people, you need to be prepared for whatever happens. So being a Boy Scout, maybe that's it. I was a Boy Scout, and that be prepared thing really does echo through. So, a little bit of thinking up front saves a lot of pain later on.
A little bit thinking up front saves a lot of pain. I like that. It's probably a sentence that I might use again in the future. It's interesting that you talk about Boy Scout, because my 2 youngest children are out on a camp. My daughter still as as a member. Her older brother as I was about to say leader, but that's actually not true. He's cooking and things like that. So there's actually other people doing the leading. But yeah, they've left, and so the house is a lot quieter with these 2 out of the house and thinking about Boy Scouts. And the feeling I have is that when my 2 oldest started to work as leaders in the scouting, that they learn a tremendous things I also recognize when I work with people. Is that something that could you say some more about learning. What did you learn at Boy Scout?
Well, I started off as a cub, and that you're quite young as a cub. That's this a long time
What's
ago.
the age, more or less? Because that's a word I don't.
Cubs, you're still in primary school, so we're talking sort of 7 to 12-ish. I check with your Scout website, and then it goes Cubs to Scouts, Scouts to Adventurers, Adventurers to Explorers. I think that's the way it goes. And being old, it was very like boys did Cubs and Scouts, and girls did Brownies and Guides. And near the twain should mix. And so I think there's a lot of working with other people's skills, because as a cub, you're a sixer. As a scout, you join a patrol. And Baden-Powell had that military mindset, that whole empire thinking, I suppose. But that whole idea of resilience and working together, and older kids teaching younger kids and learning. And I'm a collector, so the whole idea of covering your sleeves with badges and getting, the lanyard and this badge and that badge and showing how to do this and that was really appealed to me. So lots of learning, lots of helping other kids learn and grow, and becoming a patrol leader and going off. Literally, you could just go off with your patrol and set up camp in the bush, which is nice.
Yeah, and like you say, you learn what you said earlier on about older children teaching younger children and taking responsibility. And I've seen that, at least in my children, that they learn from their leaders, and at the same time, or at a later time when they become leaders, it's the next level. It's like, okay, you're there, but you're not there yet, because you still have to learn how to lead younger children. I do remember one of the first times that my children were doing that, they were saying, these youngsters, they can be so annoying. Was I also annoying at that age? And things like that. It's like, yeah, kind of.
And that I think that paying it forward is really part of it. It's like helping the next generation, pay it forward. Because I think the reason we find kids so wearing is that open curiosity, and there's no sacred cows. So they'll ask questions until they're satisfied with the answer. That relentless curiosity is a wonderful thing to nurture, right? Wouldn't it be great if we kept that all the way through our adult lives?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. If we that's what we sometimes call the learning mindset, or the growth mindset. And it's interesting that, like you say, sometimes we learn it as children, and we keep learning it in that way. Where at school, it somehow feels like, you can only learn from that teacher, and once you're out of school, it's over. Where I think in our industry, or especially in Agile, we consider that completely opposite, I would say. We have to keep learning in multiple ways. So, and did you realize that as a young child, that you were learning something from doing these activities, or was that just having fun?
I suppose on reflection, you probably were, but most of it was having fun and going out, doing various things, collecting badges. But it was gamified, right? It was the very first version of gamified that we see a lot in apps these days, where you want to collect a badge and you've got so many likes or subscribes. Well, back in the day, if you got the badge, you got to sew it on your uniform. And so
And did you saw it or yourself, or was that parents that did that, or was that also something you had to do yourself?
That's part of the game, right? You had to learn the skill of how to sew a badge on, and you're expected to, reef, lash, and be able to set up a campsite. And this is old stuff. It was canvas, and we'd have to find 3 bits of timber to put the tent up, and you're expected to sew and start a fire from flint and steel and all that good stuff. It was loads of fun, being let loose into the bush, where you've got your supplies, but then you had 2 days to play in the bush and build a campsite and then make it look like you hadn't been there when you finished. It was really good fun. So lucky.
And cleaning up at the end. I really like that you add that yeah, it was, you cleaned up as if you were not there. I think that's also so valuable that you learn it in a way, because there are not many places where you learn that, especially youngsters. I see a lot of them. Well, when they live at home, everything's cleaned up behind them and everything, and you don't learn it automatically if you're not in an environment that stimulates that. And sometimes as parents, it's tempting to solve it for your children, but actually you take away some of the learning opportunities, I would say.
I think that is the single greatest challenge of leadership, right? Choosing
Mhm.
to actively do nothing and let
Oh
somebody
yeah,
else learn. It's
and
really
that's
hard
hard.
to just, okay, you're going to come a cropper here. Things are not going to work out well if you keep going on that pathway. But if I intervene, I'm going to prevent you learning. So it's try
Mhm.
to find the right moment where you can balance safety and you getting engaged.
Mhm. That is indeed, I would say, yeah, so hard as a parent, and especially, well, you have to agree also with your co-parent on how to do this, because I might have that idea, and my partner then wants to jump in, and we have to at the same time have more or less that same idea. And yeah, that's I've noticed that in our partnership it was sometimes hard. And yeah, I realized that yeah, we really needed to be very much aligned to actually bring that value to our children of learning on their own in a way.
Definitely, that collaboration with your co-parent is so important. And I think I was particularly lucky because I grew up in the 80s. There were no mobile phones. I thank the Lord, thank all the gods, whatever you want, deity. It was good that I grew up without them, because there was lots of dumb stuff that I did that hasn't been recorded on video. So there's no photos, there's no video of me doing really stupid things. Where I think it's hard to do that these days because everyone's got a high quality camera and video tool in their pocket.
Yeah, I see that a lot. At the same time, I also noticed that because it's so easy to create videos and pictures, that I also think that sometimes the youngsters don't value it that much. They mean, just like I might text, well, the text messages I send to my partner or to friends, I will never keep them. It's like, yeah, this is throwaway conversation. My daughter does the same thing with videos. She in the morning, instead of me texting friends, or she would yeah, she would just send 10-second or 5-second video to a friend, receive another 5-second video, and they
Wow. Yeah.
back and forth send videos, and for them it's throwaway. Where for me, if I have a video or a picture, it's like I want to keep it, and I want to, because for me it feels like, yeah, videos and pictures are so valuable, because when I grew up, just like you, there's like, yeah, that was not much. The pictures that you had, you kept them, and for them it's like throw away. But unfortunately, like you say, the dumb stuff that they will do, probably there will be a video around to keep it for eternity. So it's not always the things that you want to disappear that does automatically disappear. But that's a
And
whole
that's
other thing.
the scarcity, right? When you got that film, because it costs so much to get that film developed, you had 24 photos to take. You
Mhm.
wanted to make sure that you used that wisely and you would frame it and take your time. It wasn't just a quick, I'll take a photo, unless you're
Mhm.
really into film. Always an exception, but yeah, that scarcity became you're more mindful.
Yeah, and I see the same thing with, well, they might take hundreds of pictures, and then they pick out one, and it's like where we would indeed take the time to take it, and okay, and being I think in that sense, being silly on pictures was also like a harder thing, because it's like, yeah, no, this is a serious thing, we're taking a picture, and now they're like, okay, they, yeah, be as stupid or whatever, and there might be serious pictures as well, but there might be also a lot of more silly pictures. So I think it has, yeah, in all different directions, advantages and disadvantages, of course. So yeah,
Yeah, that sense of play. It's much easier to play, right?
Exactly, because the value is different. But like you say, there is always kind of proof around, or at least there is a big risk that there is always a kind of proof around. When you or you have to have like extreme rules that when you go to a concert where they say, okay, you have to put this on your camera, or you have to give your phone away, or whatever. That's an interesting other kind of thing that we didn't have when we were growing up. In that sense, that's very much things that influenced you in who you are in growing up without smartphones, I would say.
That was a bonus.
Exactly. Let's move to that second question. If you had not been doing what you've been doing now, do you have any idea what would have become of you?
I always dreamed of being a pilot. At
Wow.
uni, I studied chemistry and computer science, and then I found out about wine, women, and song at university. So my degree wasn't the best. That's when I went. I was a school teacher for 5 years before I returned to computing. So potentially still teaching, maybe being a chemist. Maybe I would have gone out and learned how to fly. Another sideways passion. I've always been intrigued with food and cooking, so perhaps I would have been a chef.
Wow. So very different kind of styles, different kind of parts. Is there in any of these things that you said anything that, because sometimes people answer this question like, well, I could have become, or I might still become. So is there any of these things that you say, oh, maybe in a future life, I want to still play around with that and try this or that?
My non-retirement dream is to become a diving instructor. So if I could just live somewhere beautiful near the sea and go diving a couple of times a day, that would be.
And being paid for to teach others, or is that not that important?
If I could earn enough to eat and my dive fees, I'd be kind of happy with that. Because if you pick the right spot, I'm a bit of a scaredy cat when it comes to cold water. So I'd want somewhere where it's tropical waters, probably, so it's nice and warm, so that a relaxed, calm lifestyle. Because there's something nice about when you do scuba dive; it's very calming.
And so what I'm hearing is that it could be something you might want to do, but you already have the skills of diving, the diving skills.
Yeah, I can dive. Yeah.
Okay. So it's the instructor part, or the fact that you could do that almost on a daily basis and living somewhere where it's the right kind of temperature to keep doing that.
Meeting nice people. So I think the common thread of all of this is hanging out with people, doing some fun stuff.
Well, you can do that just as well in IT, depending on the kind of company you're selecting for. But yeah, it definitely the being outside in the water, that's kind of hard to do that in IT, I would say. That's a different kind of thing. It reminds me of one of the conversations I had with Jutta Eckstein, who actually used to do that, who used to being a diving instructor and combining her role as a I'm not sure if she was already an agile coach, but as working in IT and then also being a diving instructor, I assume during holiday seasons and things like that. And I can definitely imagine that that's a completely different life. And by coincidence, the person that is working on my website sent out a video today on LinkedIn about her path of learning to fly. So she's actually on, I think, for a year already, learning how to fly a plane and doing that and being really happy that she I don't know I will never tell her name, her age, but that she at a later age she would still learn something like flying planes.
I've had a couple of practice flights, and I've flown a few different things, and it is so much fun. The freedom that you get when you're young and you get a license to drive, that you can go from one place to another, but you can do it in 3 dimensions. It's just...
Yeah, I was actually that when she posted that was actually the same thing that I thought, like, oh, I can still remember the first time I was allowed to drive on my own with the car. So yeah, that kind of freedom, I can imagine. Of course, in the air, it's still, well, there is less freedom in the sense that you still have to give your flight plan up front, and so it's not like you can decide I'll move around in this or that direction. But still, while you're flying, you have some an amount of freedom, I would say. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So there is a lot there that I can recognize, and I can imagine that diving, in that sense, might be a little bit similar because you're in the water and you have that freedom to move. Or is that... I've never done either of that, so I don't know. Is there some similarity?
Oh, tremendous similarities. We could go right down the nerd hole of there's a lot of fluid dynamics involved in both of them. And they're both very technical, and if you get them wrong, you die. So
okay, I didn't think that direction, but yeah, okay, I can definitely see.
So there's elements of risk in there. So you need to be very aware of where you're going, what you're going to do, and making sure you dive within the capabilities of your personal skill level, your group, your team, your kit. So if you're just going for a very casual shore dive around a reef where there's no big currents or rips, you can just pretty well enter the water and just poke around and have a look. Whereas if you're doing a technical dive, which I'm not qualified to do, but you're going to go deep, or it's cold, or there's some factor, you have to do a lot of planning for that. Similarly with...
And I assume you can't do it alone, or is that still allowed?
You should never dive alone. You should always dive.
You shouldn't, but is that even allowed to do that alone? I don't know. I literally don't know.
Well, if you've got a tank, you can do whatever you want, right? If you've got your kit.
Yeah, but like you say, it's we can do a lot of stuff, but it might not always be smart to do it.
It's the magic 3 questions that we hit up in Agile so many times. Is like, can you? Should you? Is it the right thing to do?
Exactly. That's the kind of thing.
Yes, no. Similarly with flying, you have to check out your weather conditions. You have to check out what sort of airspace you're going through. Check your NOTAMs, your notice to airmen. Check your kit, and just approach it so that you plan it. I was really lucky. Just up the road from me, there's an air show every year. And I was talking to an F-15 fighter pilot, and he flies from Lakenheath. And his working day, he's really lucky. He chose his squadron and his base because he gets to fly 5 days a week, which is a lot for a fighter pilot. And it's a 12-hour day because it's 4 hours prep, sortie, and then a debrief. But he loves it, and he said he's got freedom. So he plans his mission, but sometimes, the mission might get extended. If there's something, another aircraft of interest he's got to go and look at, all of a sudden he's doing a refuel and changing his plan.
Yeah, I can imagine that's yeah. And I think with the planes, when you're talking about the dangers of diving, if you don't do a lot of these things, there is a risk for yourself. But just like with a car, if you're not careful with a plane, actually it's even more dangerous for the rest of the people around you. I mean, a car is basically a huge killing machine if you don't use it correctly. And I think a plane is even worse because the car, you still more or less need to stay on the road. So the people who are not around that or can try to avoid a plane, when it's crashing down on your house or somewhere else, it's like, I don't think there's much you can do to avoid that once it's coming down.
No, and with your car, if there's a mechanical problem or a power train failure with your car, you slow down and stop and you're already on the ground. Whereas if you're flying, you have, that's where altitude becomes an option. So you might be able to glide or what have you, but it's not like you can just pull over and fix the thing. You have to be able to deal with that. And that's why, yeah, I think it'd be fascinating, and kudos to your colleague who's learning how to fly. That's, yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, it's yeah. When I knew about it, but when she posted it on LinkedIn, it was like even thinking at a larger scale, especially when she talked about that whole thing. And I know that it's been a long-term dream for her as a young woman to think, but then she kind of gave up, and then at a certain age she realized, I think it was during Corona, that she realized, like, you know what, I might as well pick that up and see if I can do it. And here we are, a couple of years later. And then I think she's already, like I said, I think she's already 1 year into lessons and learning, because there's a lot of learning, theoretical stuff to learn before you're actually allowed to go into the air, let alone fly alone. But yeah, I think she describes it as something like it takes a lot longer than if I would have started it at a younger age, but I don't care. I can take the time because, you know what? Hey, this is a dream and I can do that. And of course, she has responsibilities and all the other things to keep the business going, but she can do it at her own age and yeah, create her own time to do these kind of things. And that's like, yeah, that's ultimately some kind of freedom, very similar. And that's why I brought it up to what you said about diving. And maybe in a later stage, you can go for these kind of things.
Yeah.
So we moved in all kind of directions in all kind of different things, but that's for me one of the things I really like about that, because that's for me is a little bit how we get to know each other and learn the deeper parts of life, which we typically don't always hear when we work with people.
That's the thing I've loved about listening to other conversations on this series is it's a wonderful conversation because you follow the follow the threads, just have a conversation, just really share. It's wonderful.
Yeah, that's indeed a little bit how it feels, or how what I would try to do. And Lisa Atkins said that at the end of our conversation, she said for her it felt like it just was a reminder that when we met at the conference and we're just sitting in the bar, no matter what time it is, and we're just having a chat, and by coincidence we have a camera on us, and just like you're in the bar, you might have a chat with two people, and there might be people listening in and sometimes jumping in. Okay, people can't really jump in here, but they might still be listening into her. And that's a little bit the feeling. I didn't realize it until Lisa said it, that's actually what I wanted to do. So that's a nice thing. Okay, let's move to that third question. What do you consider at this moment your biggest challenge, at least the biggest challenge that you want to share openly on the internet, of course, and why is that a good thing for you?
This is where I'm going to open Pandora's box because everyone's talking about the death of Scrum and Agile is dead and nobody wants us anymore and it's all going to be product and blah, blah, blah. This is what I'm living at the moment. So as a small business entrepreneur, as an Agile coach, a professional Scrum trainer, there's a lot of heat and noise out there about it. Agile is dead, long-lived product. I think it's a degree of rebadging. I think it's a good thing for me, and it's a great thing for the industry because we all have this wonderful opportunity to live our principles. We go around, we talk to organizations about transparency, inspection, adaptation. We talk about empiricism. We work with other people and their livelihoods and their businesses. Well, it's time for us to drink our own champagne.
I like the way you pronounce and drink your own champagne, because that's something I've learned from Portia Tong, who talked about drink your own champagne. It used to be eat your own dog food, but I prefer drink your own champagne. Although I'm one of the people who hardly drink any alcohol, I still prefer this sentence over the other one.
There's one or two people I know. A friend, their dog was fed really good steak. So that kind of food I can swing at. But the kibble that I give my dog, not so much.
Exactly.
So I'd much rather drink my champagne, or you can have. I think that they're coming up with low alcohol champagne, Eve. So
Yeah, I know. There is actually, but yeah, would go lead us to multiple other kind of things. But and one
Trying to
of
keep
these,
off tangent. Yeah. So I
no,
think
no,
this
go
challenge that
ahead.
our industry is facing, it's wonderful for the mirror to be held up against us.
Hmm.
And there's been the massive boom, and that massive growth that happened in the 2010s through to 2020, where basically a lot of people did minimal amount of training. Maybe they did an online course for a couple of hours and were able to put Agile Coach or Scrum Master on their CV. They weren't connected to the principles. So I think
Mhm.
it's a wonderful opportunity to evaluate our principles. And for us as an Agile community, perhaps it's time we thought about having an accreditation that is not wedded to an organization like Scrum.org or Scrum Alliance or IC
Hmm.
Agile or something more akin to the International Coaching Federation or the International Facilitators Federation, where it acknowledges these other things so that we can actually check in, so that you can't just put Scrum Master at the end of your LinkedIn profile. And
Hmm.
I've seen
Yeah,
them all behind.
the even today I saw, I don't remember anymore, but I think it was today or this weekend that I saw some posts around. Okay, now there is well, there was already the Scrum Master from the two organizations that did Scrum. Then we had also kind of Scrum Masterish kind of title from the organization behind Safe. Now we have a similar kind of thing about Less, and that might be a little another kind of different kind of what does it mean to be a Scrum Master. And at some point it becomes so, yeah, different that, yeah, what does it actually still mean? Yeah.
Yeah,
And even there, with I was trained back in 2006 about Scrum, so long time ago. What I was trained at that time, is that still valuable for now? Well, because like I don't even know. I think the Scrum guide didn't even exist at the time.
it had.
So
Yeah,
yeah, so there was already multiple versions of the Scrum guide published since then. Okay, because I'm in the industry, I did read to these and I did learn about the multiple versions. But I can imagine that other people who were with me in that training, that they would not feel the need for learning about it. And how is that then still valuable? Yeah, because our industry is moving, and it's not like when, I don't know, when you do judo or taekwondo or whatever, when you have a certain belt in it, it kind of stays the same. It kind of means the same thing. I assume. I don't know anything about judo, but the way I see it, it's kind. If you have a certain belt, I think, okay, this is because you learned certain practices and certain things. And in agile, that isn't always the case, or it might evolve even more, right?
yes, and the
Hmm.
core principles, like if you have a look at the original book, if you it's on my bookshelf the other side of the wall over there, but Ken and Mike Beedle's Ken Schwaber and Mike Beedle wrote the first book of Scrum way back.
Oh,
um,
the I'm
you
trying to
probably
find it. Yeah, it's somewhere there, but it's the black one with the colors.
Yes,
Is
yeah,
that the
and
one?
it's got the letters like red, yellow, green, but
Exactly.
it causes cognitive dissonance because red is in yellow writing and things like that. And that was the first time the Scrum values were mentioned. And we heard
Hmm.
about the force of focus, openness, respect, courage, and commitment. The principles of empiricism are there. Transparency is called out. Inspection and adaptation is highlighted. Now, there is a couple of fatal flaws in that book. First of all, Scrum is all in capitals, which is where you see it a lot. And it's not an acronym, it is a homage to rugby. And as a rugby player, Takeuchi and Nanaka got it wrong. It should have been called Maul, not Scrum, because a maul is that actual passage in rugby union where you get the group of people moving the ball downfield. So that's one thing. The other one is they abbreviated Master of Scrum to Scrum Master, and that's caused huge amounts of chaos.
Boom.
And every time I say Master of Scrum, I've got a Metallica riff that plays in my head straight after. And I was running a PSM last week, and one of the delegates in the course came up with a wonderful adaptation, which is to call it the Scrum Maestro. So somebody who helps that team function. And I would assert, if you understood the core principles of empiricism and the Scrum values when you did your Scrum training way back when, they still extend. And the fact that the Scrum Guide has iterated on versions, I think has helped clarify things and has called out other things. And it's purposely incomplete. Now, the schisms that we have with less not liking their bits and safe perverting, in my opinion, the Scrum accountabilities, because a safe Scrum Master is not the same as a Scrum Master, and a safe product owner is not the same as a Scrum product owner. But both of them are scaling frameworks. And whoever I've worked with, when you scale, all bets are off anyway.
That's definitely something we can say there.
And so Scrum is like the C major scale. If you're a musician, the first scale you learn to play is C major on the piano. It's middle C, and you know, those 8 notes up and back, and whatever instrument, you get one scale. And it's like, hey, I can play a scale, but you're not a musician. But it's the backbone of the rest of your music. And when we scale, I think this is where we have instruments in different keys. We've got different contexts. What I think would be helpful is if we agreed when we work with organizations, if we just agree the vocabulary in the organization, because you know what, the world is a wonderful place and we're all going to argue the points about certain things. But if we agree, at least in our organization, what our reserve vocabulary is, it's going to be a lot easier. And if you got the Scrum.
I agree. I've been in one organization where we talked about, or was it, can't come up with the right word, but it was it something about self-organization? No, it's something along that line, but it was a different word. I can't come up with it. But we did realize that autonomy, it was autonomy. And we realized that that's such a word that has so many meanings. If you Google it, you have, I think, I don't know, a couple of millions of answers. And of course, people in the team would keep Googling until they found a definition that they liked. And then they said, yo, this is what I'm doing. So, because that's how it works. Yeah. You look for a definition, you don't like it, but you realize there's a lot of other definitions. So you keep looking until something you like. And so what we ended up doing is ending up with our own kind of words. We came up with something. I think my boss came up with, she or someone with the people she worked with came up with your own finger principle. And what that meant is that in a team, you can do anything you want as long as you only have the risk of cutting your own fingers, because that's for the fingers of the people in your team. Once you do something that might hurt fingers of somebody else outside your team, that's no longer within your autonomy. That's really outside. And because it was a sentence like that, they couldn't Google it outside, and we could literally say, this is our definition of that. And that is for me a little bit, and for me, that's also partially how would I say, and then we'll go to another framework that's risky, but the Spotify model, for me, it's something similar. They came up with some words that worked for them, that they could give a definition that works for them. But of course, at some point, then it starts to get out, and then people start to, use it somewhere else, and then it no longer works, and then we're off again. And for me, the real thing is, like you just said, come up with your own words, give them a definition, and okay, this is how we do, and you make your own book of methodology of whatever, of company XYZ, and this is what we're trying to do, and then keep evolving it, because what you do today is different as what you did yesterday and what you'll do in 2 weeks and something like that. And that's for me much more agile than, okay, I'm following Scrum Guide, whatever version. That's a whole different thing.
Well, as soon as we're locked into versions, we're constrained. And if we think about what you've just described as the finger principle, if we could have and lock ourselves into some core operating principles, then it becomes so much easier to follow, right? So your team has to comply with the finger principle. You can do whatever you want, but don't cut anyone else's fingers off. Oh, that's a good principle, right? Do no harm. Good principle. Now, when we can distill our boundaries into principles, we're anti-bureaucratic. And that gives us flexibility and adaptability, because it's a code that is easy to communicate, it's easy to understand, it isn't ambiguous, and it's flexible, because when it comes to the gray area, it's immediately a point of conversation. And that's what we're really looking for in agility, to define the constraints in such a way that it's really clear for 90% of the time. And for that 10%, we know who to go and talk to and have the discussion and come to an agreement. Like, if we do that, really, aren't we agile?
Yeah, and I think, and the thing is then to make sure that that conversation takes place for the unclear stuff, because that's another thing I've sometimes see, that we think, oh, but it's clear, because wait a minute, let's check, because like I think in every relationship or in every team or whatever, there are things that we assume that means the same thing, but it actually might mean something completely different. And then realizing when there are differences that we need to talk about that. That is where I think a lot of that. I really like that you consider a lot of that your biggest challenge, and clarifying all of that. That's a good thing for you and for the people around you in a way.
Well, I think it's a real test of whether we actually are prepared to live the stuff that we're helping other people adopt. And if you're not, then you're a hypocrite, in which case, get off my lawn. It's time for you to go. So perhaps it's that point on the adoption curve where we're in that pit of despair, where the people who were doing it purely just following the numbers without actually understanding the core principles or looking for the real intent, we're shedding them. So there will be organizations that will thrive and survive, whatever they're called. And I think it's those people that will use values and principles to help organizations to deliver better value in a humane way, much like the original creators or the people who inspired the frameworks way back in the mid-90s were doing. And I think it's a return to the roots. It's a call. It's a siren call to us to true ourselves up and get back to what it's meant to be about.
Yeah, I really like that. I really like that, because indeed that's the thing. It's I understand why we have some things written down and why we have it to teach people, because it really helps to get some kind of framework and to get some kind of, okay, but it's always just the starting point. It's never the ending point. And sometimes it's sold or it's used inside companies as if it's the ending point. Okay, we'll implement that framework, and from that moment on, we're agile.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, no, it's like that's just the start.
It's that dangerous question. It's like, well, what are the best practices? There aren't any. There are many good or complementary practices, but there's no such thing as a best practice in a complex adaptive system. And
I used to have a slide or a picture that I once saw about somebody using so-called best practice to look at code, but it was best practice from, I know I'm going to pronounce it incorrectly, but Feng Shui, so the way how you organize your home in a good way. And that person was using these principles to give feedback about code. And so it's like, no, that could be a best practice in the way you organize a house, but it has nothing to do with code. And I really love that example, because that's actually how most best practices are abused. It used to be a good practice in some kind of company at some kind of time, but that doesn't mean it's always the best thing for all companies in all times.
Beautifully said.
And at the same time, when people learn something new, they're looking for good practices. They're looking for, okay, how can I get going? And of course, I do remember, for example, when we talked about learning how to drive. When I learned how to drive, I know that one of the things was said is like, okay, you have to be in the middle of the road, and you have to guide your steering wheel to stay in the middle. And I had the feeling, I do remember, I had the feeling like I keep still, but actually, if I look back, I was like doing this to stay still. And now I hardly might touch my steering wheel, but I'm driving straight. And it's not that I can actually say this is what I do or that what I do differently. But after driving for more than 20 years, that's kind of how I learned to do that. And then I had to teach my children how to drive. And how do you explain that? It's like, yeah.
Yeah, two anecdotes bouncing on from that. The first time I drove on the incorrect side of the road, which is the right, because I come from the Commonwealth and we drive on the left. To my brain, that is the correct side of the road. And I was traveling in the United States, and my mate's in the seat next to me. At every corner we took, he was like, right, 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 like a rally driver, because I would swing out and natively want to drive on the left-hand side of the road. And he was telling me to get over to the right. The other interesting thing is my son's learning to drive, and he's been sim racing for 2 years.
So he has already some skills on a computer, but now he has to translate that to a real car.
But his spatial awareness is extraordinary, and his fine motor coordination is off the chart. Like he can use, there's a wonderful aircraft simulator called DCS, Digital Combat Simulator, where you fly aircraft, and he can aerially refuel. He can start up complex jets from scratch. He's got a good enough computer to play with this, and he can drive Formula One cars and rally cars. And so when I'm in the passenger seat with him, he is missing things by, a centimeter, because his spatial awareness is so good. It makes me nervous, but he's like, I've got this.
I can imagine. It could be that when he has to pass his driving license, that the people say, no, you have to slow down, you have to be careful, because they don't expect you to be that good at this age.
His driving instructor's telling him, you have to exaggerate your head movements, because he's so used to gaming and the spatial awareness of just quickly glancing with the eyes.
And people think that he's not watching.
He's not looking, so he has to physically turn his head so that they can say he's looking at the mirrors and what have you. And this ties into your point about when you drive, because you are now at that, shall we use the Shu Hari, the martial arts thing, that you are now at one with driving. You're not, you could be for domestic driving, you're at peak ability, right? And so it becomes innate for you, and you'll find new ways of doing things and innovate intuitively. You're now unconsciously competent, because
exactly. I really like the analogy with your son, because I never even thought about it, but I have a nephew that used to drive these small little remote cars, and I was never able to do that, but when I went to his house, or when he came, he always had such a thing with him, and he could drive that really good, backwards, forward, at speeds or whatever. And I now realize that he's actually today he's a rally pilot. So in his spare time, he does rally things, and of course he's been doing that since he's been 12, driving things, and his spatial seeing and knowing the knobs and how to drive. He's been doing that since ages. I never even thought about the link between these two, but of course that's he's been practicing all these kind of skills. And I never understood that. I was never able to do well. I was able to kind of drive forward and backwards and maybe take a corner, and he would do it at 10 times the speed and backwards, and it was like whoa. And that's actually what he's doing with a car these days, when he's a rally pilot. He's not Formula One, so it's still there might be other kind of levels, but still he's doing it at a speed that it's
different.
Exactly.
Different competition, right? Like and that's where Lewis Hamilton started, was go-karting. But when you're racing, when you're performing at that level, it's like watching the Olympics. It's a difference between an Olympic swimmer and me when I just go and plod up and down the floor. Some bits recognizable.
Trying to survive in the water, and then knowing how to get to a certain place, and there are these okay, that's.
When my kids were younger, they were swimmers, and one of the UK GB swimmers was a member of the club, and she came back to train. And watching her swim, her name was Jazz Carling. She's a freestyle sprinter. Watching her, it just looked effortless. She just literally glided up and down the pool. It was just so beautiful to watch. And I think what we're talking about here is mastery of skill, whatever that skill is. When you see people perform that skill, it's effortless.
Exactly, and but I think that's also, in going back to Agile, that we sometimes forget as I would say, as coaches or as developers. For some of it's indeed mastery at a certain skill. It looks very easy and for some people it really is easy, but we forget that there is maybe 20 years of practicing at a very young age, or I don't know, being genetic good at a certain thing or learning it. But that doesn't mean that it's easy for everyone. It's easy for that person at this moment, because of everything that happened before that, I would say. And then again, I can imagine that even for this person, she might meet another person that is still a difference. If any of these would swim against Michael Phelps or other kind of thing, they might feel like, oh, I'm good, but that's another level good. I don't know what's that level to compare, but I think a lot of us, if I compare my kind of coaching skills, development skill, whatever, there's always people who are doing it so much better, and that's not per se means that I'm bad or worse. It's just it's a different kind of skill level. It's a different kind of.
Since you've segued it back to the topic of the pod, which is Agile, I think Agile coaching, there's context, right? And depending upon your personal style, there might be a natural affinity with certain customers, clients, individuals that you as a coach will work better with them than because of the way you roll.
Exactly.
My coaching style is very direct. That's just me. I do inhabit the coaching stance and engage in the conversation, but also it's direct. Whereas some people will prefer a different style, and that's okay, because the world is wonderful because we're all so different. And so I think this is where having a couple of different coaches on a team can really help, because it means that people have got that optionality of choice of finding somebody whose style works best with them. And it goes all the way back to best practice. There's no best practice in coaching. There's the right practice in a context. And also reminds us in deep humility that there are situations that perhaps we should recuse ourselves and shouldn't coach, because maybe we're not the right person for that situation.
Yeah, and again, that brings no value on us. It also doesn't mean that this person is not coachable. It just means that the match is not ideal.
Yeah.
I do remember I did 2 years of therapy training, not to become a therapist, but to learn some of their skills. And I do remember one of the teachers there saying, like, there are actually people that are so close to me because some of their pains I encountered when I was younger, and so that I couldn't. And some of them, they said, I'm actually really good at doing therapy for these people because I do understand. And there was another trainer that said the exact opposite. They said, it's so close to me that actually this means I would be the worst kind of person to help out, because it would reopen my pain and some other kind of things. And so again, that there's no value there, but it's about making sure. And I think this is why I bring it up, is as a coach or as a person that's trying to work with people, it's really valuable if you understand what is your good kind of thing and bad. And if you realize that, hey, like you say, I'm very direct in coaching. If you want to be coached by me, you have to be able to deal with that. And maybe you won't say that in the first 5 minutes, but I guess in part of the first conversations, you would have to bring that up, because you would need to realize, is this going to work or not going to work? And think, that's and for that, but you have to already understand yourself, I would say.
Yeah, and then that's the challenge of a lifetime, right?
Oh yeah, of multiple lifetimes in a way.
Back on the
And
wheel again.
yeah, and at least multiple clients and yeah, learning and thinking. Um, and again, it doesn't make you a worse coach than anyone else. It's just a different kind of style. And that's the good thing indeed about having larger clients that have multiple kind of coaches that you can swap around and you can work with. That you can have that kind of thing. Because the worst thing that could happen to that client is to have a full set of coaches who are exactly the same and have the same style. That also wouldn't help out.
Well, that's the problem with the clone wars, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think there's also it's a gift of being a professional Scrum trainer by offering training classes. Each class is a wonderful snapshot of a new group of people where you can hone your craft. And so when I'm delivering a Scrum Master training, my intent is to deliver that through the stance of a Scrum Master. So a chance of honing those skills and trying to demonstrate them, to be that living example.
Yeah, I like that, and indeed, I do agree. The having a training class is where you can every time experiment. I do remember it's a completely different training, but I did 5 years of .NET training, and while I was doing that, I learned about. I was following a 2-year class on leadership. So every month I was following a 2-day of training on leadership, and I do remember in these first couple of months I did experiment a lot, but how would I lead this small little team? It's not really a team because they're coming from different kind of clients, but every time it was on a Monday, like, okay, let's experiment a little bit. And sometimes it was things like, hey, this kind of works with these people, but it doesn't feel right to me, or vice versa. Yeah, it was almost kind of a game, but I learned a lot, and my teaching skills improved a lot by experimenting and realizing that there is something to learn at the next level, not just a technical thing, but how do you deal with a new set of people every week and everything. That's
I think that's the essence of it. So when I was at uni, I was in the Army Reserve, which is infantry, and one of the powerful lessons from that was there's a subject where you get taught how to teach. And in a very army way, they said the point of training is to promote and maintain the desire to learn.
It's not something I would have associated with army in a way, that kind of sentence. So I'm trying to understand where my brain thinks that, but I'm not sure if I would get it out here.
Because you've got to learn, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the statement.
And there's 3 different things. You've got knowledge, you've got knowledge lessons, skill lessons, and practical and drill. Sorry. So like how to walk from one place to another in a structured format, how to do stuff with some pretty complex things, and how to do some complex things like codes, ciphers, maps, navigation, and then putting it all together. So that stuck with me. That resonated, and I think I tried to apply that when I was for a while. I was a school teacher when I was doing things, and now that I'm helping people, and I think that's it. If you can find and connect with people to reignite that spark for learning, because sometimes that gets shut down for whatever reason. So if we can reignite that spark and just help people to be curious and up for a little bit of exploration about the world's going to be better.
Wow, I really like that, and I have the feeling I might be wrong, but it's also we kind of moved automatically to that next question about what drives you. I'm not sure if that's one of the things that drives you, but yeah, I think for people following it, it's very clear that you're very passionate, that you're very into a lot of these things. Is what you just said something that drives you, or is there some more things that drive you?
I agonize this. You know how we encourage people in their business to create a vision statement or a purpose statement? the purpose for my organization is to enable individuals, teams, and organizations to deliver more effective value in a humane way.
Wow, that's a very nice statement. And if you look back on that and you reflect on all of that, is that something that, because that's of course a statement that you created and thinking hard and working, I guess, with a couple of people to come up with that. But if you would look back at this statement and you look back at what happened in your life earlier, is that something that was already there without the words when you were younger, or how was that?
Oh no, yeah, I think you're attributing far too much planning to my life. I've followed serendipity for most of my life and just floated like a leaf on the breeze. I rolled from one thing to another with whatever seemed to be a good idea at the time. So it's a curious pathway that's led me to where I'm at now. And it was, I think, the epiphany I had when I was working in my first Scrum team, and we weren't doing, it was very close to good Scrum, but it was a really good team. It resonated with me because I can remember being frustrated as an engineer when some project manager would come up and say, "How long is it going to take you to get this project done?" And I'd say 6 months, and they'd say, "Oh, you've got 3." And I'm like, "Well, how does that work?" Like, there's the chair. Away you go. I'll watch you. And they go, "Oh, no, but you've got to do it in 3 months." I said, "But I told you it's 6 months worth of work."
Yeah. It reminds me of, I don't know where I read it, but something that was when Ken Beck told or wrote, I'm not sure, but of one of the first project he worked on, something very similar. He told like it would take 2 months for 2 people, something like that. And they basically let him do it alone, so no other person. And it then took like 4 months or a little bit more. And he felt like a failure until he realized, and I think it was based on coaching that he had, that, wait a minute, I was alone. I was supposed to do it with another person. And in the end, it kind of was the same thing. It's a 4 months person project. And yeah, they were on his like, yeah, it's taking longer and whatever. Like, wait a minute. I actually was pretty good in my estimation and somehow we're living in an industry that people think, oh, when I put pressure on people, when I say you get only half the time, they think it will make it go faster. Or I would say it might actually slow us down, because we might, feel so much like under pressure that we're actually are cutting corners or whatever, and it's actually not helping there.
I felt that far too much, and I think that what builds us is learning from really terrible experiences. And I've been around long enough to be on a death march, where you've got a project that is just, it's the train that's heading for the wall, and it just seems to get faster and faster before the crash. I've been on the projects where they expect you to work Saturdays. I've been on the overtime gigs. I've been on the ones where they're rushing to hit a date for no real reason, rather than somebody set a date, and they start looking for workarounds in quality. I've worked on watermelon projects where they're deep red, where we are building the thing, and the higher you get, the greener they get. Having seen all that, I don't think it's not fair on the organization. It's definitely not fair on the customer. And the true intent and the joy I had when I was working as a professional engineer of being able to smile and say, this is done. That can go into production with no further work. The documentation's automated. We've updated our help manual. The deployment scripts are automated. We've tested the rollout. We've tested the rollback. This is robust. So everything that we can think of has been tested. Yeah, there's stuff that we probably haven't thought of, and we haven't tested for that because we didn't think of that. So we accept there's probably some rabbit hole in there, but by and large, we're pretty good with this. Everything that we can
We
think about.
solved everything. Exactly. Everything we think about is kind of taken care of, or we think it's no big risk. And yeah,
We've thought about it, we've architected it, we've engineered, it's secure, it's reliable, it's robust, there's failovers, there's good error handling, it's logged, it's a well-built piece of kit, that workmanship and that joy of being a good craftsperson. That really appealed to me. And I thought, connecting with the customer, giving them something really nice that they wanted, getting feedback and just going again, it seemed to me to be more honest, having more integrity, and just a better way of working. Less drama. That's what it's all about, right? A whole lot less drama. Like, let's not have drama.
I love how you say that, because I'm working these days as an engineering manager, and literally in a management meeting, we talked about how can we go for less drama. This is a company where there is a lot of passion, and drama is typically also when people are passionate, because if there's no drama at all, it doesn't mean that things are good. It might be that people don't care anymore. So that's the other thing. But drama doesn't mean that like you say, we want less drama, because that doesn't mean we don't want to solve things. We can be very passionate and try to deal with it based on the facts, and less on being a drama queen or whatever.
But I want the healthy conflicts. I want you to I want you to look me dead in the eyes and go, look, Simon, that is a stupid idea, because that's going to create a security hole. Simon, that's a stupid idea because it's going to make it harder to maintain. No, we haven't thought this through because there's a gap. I want those arguments. I want healthy conflict. As long as we exit gracefully, and afterwards we can go and have a cup of tea together and laugh and talk about whatever, what are you going to, whatever.
Exactly. But then people are playing the ball and not the person, right?
That's super important, right?
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Yeah.
It's the idea, not the person.
Yeah. I love that. It's the idea, not the person. That is definitely something that is important.
And so if we're people acting as the hammer and the anvil, that idea is the thing that we're forging, and we want to heat it and cool it and smash it until it is the strongest, best idea within the constraints of our organization, because not everything has to be built to the nth degree. So those constraints that we were talking about earlier, the finger rule, we need to know what constraints we're working towards, because if it's a color matching game on a phone, that's slightly different to a risk critical energy system, or some piece of life.
Exactly. If you're working on a nuclear plant, then okay, the way you're dealing with, or if you, I don't know, working on what is it, the thing that is implanted in your heart. A pacemaker. I was about to say the peacemaker, and I was like, no, this is wrong. The pacemaker, if you're working on the pacemaker, that you want a totally different kind of level of security and not being able to hack and whatever, all kind of things, then if it's just a website for an event that just is one weekend and then it's gone.
Oh, perfect.
Kind of level that's completely different.
But there still is a diligence and duty of care, because if, let's say, that one weekend website is Glastonbury.
Oh yeah, again, that it depends if we're talking about the scouting, and if there's a small little party for the scouting and we expect 100 people, or if it's Glastonbury, okay, that's a different kind of level. And that might be, I don't know, because some of the I'm using that example because I know in Belgium some of the big festivals came out of scouting organizations and other kind of things. So the very first years that might be a very small thing, but then they keep investing, and all of a sudden it's now an event 30 years later where it's like 60,000 or 100,000 people in a weekend. Yeah, that's the different kind of thing, but you have to keep evolving. If they would keep using the software of the first year, well, there wasn't any software 30 years ago, but still, if there would be, then it would be
annually, right?
Exactly.
An event with a checklist. Oh,
that would be impossible. That's you need some kind of, even if it's just for selling tickets and all these kind of things. I came with the idea because a friend of mine told me about Tomorrowland, that she was at the very first edition, and basically, so that's a huge event in Belgium, but where people all over the world. But the very first years, you went to a shop where you could buy, I don't know, a pack of cigarettes, or you went to a shop where you can buy French fries, and you say, oh, by the way, and also a ticket for that event, because that's how it was in the very first days. And now it's online and it's selling out in 1 hour for I
wow.
don't know how many people. So like, yeah, the same kind of software, the same kind of thing is completely different. That's the kind of thing I really like, that as examples about how things could be different. Um, Again, moving in all kind of directions and with a lot of different kind of contexts. I want to move to because I feel that we're also talking about some of these larger things. What is for you something that you call your biggest achievement? And before we jump into that, the last moments that I'm talking about it with people, I always ask the question below, because it's basically, this is your moment to brag and to be very proud. Is it easy for you, Simon, to brag and to really say, hey, this is something I'm proud of? Is that easy for you?
No, I'm not super comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
I always think I could have done better, faster, stronger, whatever. I think there's areas. I think being a parent, my kids they're wonderful people, so I think that's a huge achievement and important to me. Being a partner. When it comes to the professional world of Agile, I am really proud of helping Scrum.org grow, because I was the first PST in the UK. I was one of the first in Europe. I was there at the first face-to-face. I looked after the professional Scrum Master course after Gunther Verheyen, Scrum.org, and they went to the steward model, and my co-author Stephanie and I looked after the professional Scrum Master course for 3 years. And that's where we wrote our book, Mastering Professional Scrum. That I see that all melded together. I've helped facilitate or led something like 20 train the trainers for potential professional Scrum trainers. So I've helped people on their learning journey so that they could help other people on their learning journey. Incredibly proud of that. I think that's helped me shape another generation of PSTs and hopefully help people's understanding of Scrum grow. And what all that was while running my own business and what have you. So
Because that I think is important to say, that there is a training and there is everything you do. But with I'm not a Scrum trainer or anything like that. But what I understand from this community is that a lot of that is basically on your own time, helping out, coaching, and some of that. Right. So there is and in a way, you're growing your competitors, because if you're a Scrum trainer and you help other people become a trainer, they become your competitors. But that's one of the things I do like about this community, is that we know that, or we think, or at least the community thinks, like, there's enough space for more people, and the better they are, the better at least that the whole world is of understanding Scrum. And that is that a good paraphrasing of how that works?
I think that's right. And I was really fortunate in my very first contract gig. I was working with a financial institution, and they had a really interesting problem that they needed solving, and they got the help of Wintellect. Wintellect, one of the premier Microsoft Windows consulting organizations in the world, and their founders wrote lots of books, and they worked with Microsoft on the kernel, and really
Yeah, I know. I tried to come up with the names of the people, but yeah, I know who they are because I've read some of the books that they're written.
We've probably all got a couple of their books. You know, if you want to learn how to debug, you went on a Wintellect course and you suddenly learned how to read crash dump logs, like really
Exactly.
a crash dump log. And they demonstrated a wonderful thing. And I'm still friends with the chap that I work with, Dan Sloan. He's amazing. He's a leader based out in America. People who worked with Wintellect and then moved on, they referred to them as alumni, which I think
Mhm.
is a beautiful metaphor because they learn and grow together. And at a certain point, if you want to go and run your own business, then even better. Like what a voice of recognition that you've learned enough for you to go and spread your wings. And I think as a parent, it's the same thing we want to do. We want to grow roots and wings. We need our kids to have enough roots so that they're founded in the ground, and they need to be able to have the confidence to spread their wings and fly. Now, if we can give
And
that,
in a way, they are alumni because they keep your name if you're lucky.
maybe not, but and so when it comes to growing the community, I
Mhm.
think that helps. And it's interesting if you have a look in Netherlands. I think Netherlands has got the highest concentration of Scrum trainers per capita than anywhere else in the world because it's a pretty small country physically as well as in population. They've got a huge number of professional Scrum trainers, and
Mhm.
they're all surviving. And I think there's for the professional Scrum community, there's solo entrepreneurs, there's people that work for much larger organizations. It's a mix.
Yeah, I think that's yeah. I trying to because you meant again multiple kind of thing, but Wintellect. I just came up. I think the person that founded, or at least was one of the people who founded, was one that I read a couple of books, was Jeffrey Richter.
Yeah.
That was for me. It's like wow, that kind of person. That what he wrote as books, and then how he actually understood Windows at a level that I probably only when I read his books only understood like 1/10 of what he wrote, but it made me understand Windows and then .NET so much more than anything. His Windows programming application for Windows. I think that's how the one of his books was called. I learned so much from that part, and that's I really like when you say when people call themselves alumni, because indeed when you create such a community of smart people because of the training and the books and everything that happened around that, it showed like, hey, it's kind of like a brand of, okay, this is all right, it's not kind of, it is a brand that is respected when people say, oh, you did work like that. And I think in the agile space we have a couple of them. I would say for a long time Scrum Masters was a similar kind of brand. Like the discussion we had in the beginning, it might no longer be true because the brand might be what kind of different brand it is. But I do think it is important that there is some kind of thing, because it used to be. Then we go back to, is agile dead or not? But it used to be that agile meant, okay, this is a person that that it's caring about values, caring about certain principles. And these days we have it's almost like an insult if you're saying that you're agilist in a way, depending on how people look at you.
The name, I just did a quick check, and John Robbins was the other co-founder of Wintellect, and he wrote the debugging book. And doing that 5-day debugging course taught me so much about a methodical scientific thinking. It's phenomenal. But one of my favorite movies is The Princess Bride, and there's a wonderful scene in it where one of the characters keeps using the word inconceivable, and another one turns around and goes, I don't think that word means what you think it does.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we're at now with Scrum and Scrum Master. And I think it's because it's really easy to do a 30-minute online course and say you've got a Scrum Master certificate. A lot of people say the 2-day course isn't there. Everybody that I've led through PSM course, there's some profound learnings in that course, and it was built upon the original course that Ken wrote. And so it's coming, it's one step away from the co-creator of Scrum. And I know Ken and Jeff have slightly different takes on what you should be getting out of the framework, which is entertaining, but there it is. So I think it's that diminification, and that happens because we're successful, right? Agile's now the default. But
yeah, I think that's what Jerry Weinberg used to say: the wider you spread it, the thinner it gets, because it gets confused, and similar kind of things. And I'm going to try if I can bring on the book that you just talked about, because I do indeed love that book as much. Let me see if I can bring it on. Actually, no, that's not what I'm supposed to click on. I had a second screen that was blanking out, so that's why. And I think this is the book that you're talking about, debugging applications.
That's it.
I'm trying to see. I know it's somewhere there because I never threw it away, but I can't find it on my shelf now. But it's indeed, and it looks like my camera now got frozen. I'm not sure what's happening, but yeah. I'm trying to see that. Yeah, it's something else.
Do the IT thing and turn it off and turn it on again. But the heuristics that John goes through in that debugging, that Windows debugging box, are just really, really awesome. Great algorithms, great thought patterns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to turn indeed with my camera. The interesting part is that if I use my software to look at my camera, I can see myself moving. So it's unfortunately the software that I'm using. So that's the recording software. So okay, I'll keep using trying a little bit. Let's move to that next question and see if I can get it working again. So we talked about your biggest achievement. So the next question is: do you have a personal agility tip to share?
It's not that profound. Prioritize and execute. Limit your whip. Put it in a list. Work through your list. I think if we all just practice what we try to get other people to do. I'm not trying to be glib there, but I've found that works for me because I've always struggled with having too much work in progress. It's
yeah, I think this is what a lot of people would recognize, right? So that when we try to do that, when the better we are at that, the better we are at limiting the work that we're working on. It's how would I say it? It usually works, but it feels so, I would say, almost counterintuitive for me. I don't know if you recognize that.
Yeah, it's. I've got a couple of metaphors for this. It's a bit like eating soup, right? And this is like doing agile well is like eating soup gracefully. Now, if we're eating soup, we get one spoonful of soup at a time, and we take it, we put it in our mouth, and then we eat that soup, and then we go for a second mouthful. If we've got a mouthful of soup and we try and put a second mouthful in, it's very messy, and we'll often end up with not having any soup swallowed and just a lot worn. And so if we just exercise good table manners, all will be good. But it is counterintuitive, and just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy.
Yeah, I really like that the metaphor, because indeed it also shows a little bit when we learn how to eat, or when you learn how to eat ourselves. That our toddlers that are learning how to eat themselves, they they want to eat and they keep eating and they put so much things in their mouth and then it doesn't work at all. And it takes some years and a lot of practice to learn some good table manners. And I think that's the exact same thing, like you say, with work, because somehow we don't always take that time to do that. That's
no.
Yeah.
So I would like to practice the techniques with more rigor.
Yeah, I like that. It's and can you recognize where okay, that was kind of strange. I tried to do something, but that didn't work. Sorry. When you talk about that, the lessons that you learned to do this, were there? How did you pick that up, or how did you learn these kind of things?
I there's the intellectual learning, but I'm one of these kinds of people that even though other people have run an experiment and found it to be true, I need to go and walk into the door without opening it myself to realize that it's pretty solid and that I can't phase shift through the door or try something clever. So I have to run a few experiments before it actually works for me. So as I've been in and out of my own business since 2007, just trying to run a business as well as be a trainer, coach, consultant, it's tricky. And at one point, I was leading a team in a very large engagement with a multinational company, and that became super busy. And that's when I realized, I pushed myself to my absolute limit. I realized that because I was just working all the time, and that's not healthy. So trying to find that balance is really, really key. And, limiting whip for a holistic life balance, because I don't think anyone's going to die and that last breath think, geez, I wish I'd worked harder, as a reflection of their life on this planet. They're going to be thinking about the laughter with friends more, or the conversation they could have had, the dive they didn't make, the skill they didn't learn, the concert they didn't go to. It's not like, oh geez, I wish I'd done another 4 hours of admin.
Yeah, that's definitely something I think many people recognize. Still, that might actually give you can still hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Because my screen gives all kind of strange messages as if you can't hear me. But yeah, the when you say about the things I wish I'd done more private and other kind of things of enjoying life, that also might give some kind of feeling that, oh, I should even do more, but then on a personal level. Is that something that you sometimes feel, that next to the work you have to do then so much more enjoyment, and that might give again too much whip, but then on a personal level? Or is that
Yeah, I think you're very right there. I think everything in moderation, including moderation, right? If we choose how we're going to slice and dice our time, just be careful about how much we take on and commit to. And this is where your work, what you're doing, as well as your commitments to other people, your family, they're important. But don't forget commitments to yourself and your friends. But it's balance. It's very nuanced. There's no absolute, right?
there is no absolutes? I really like that. That is indeed where a lot of that is coming from.
And that's my favorite Yoda quote, which is where Yoda. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I've got a big Lego AT-AT behind me. That's the legs of that you can see in camera shot. And Yoda turns around and says, "Only Sith see things in absolutes," which in self is an absolute statement. So does that mean Yoda is a Sith Lord? Discuss.
Yeah, that's indeed a very nice statement, a very nice thing. So I want to move to that next question. What is something you have learned about remote working? And did it, for many people, we learned about remote working when COVID hit? Is that something that you've done before, or how should I see that?
I think the volume of it was something new to me. I think my native Australian accent became a lot stronger over COVID, because I lapsed back because you're sitting here talking to camera, hearing your own voice, and everything else is coming out through a speaker. So I became more and more Australian. I think the disease, the challenge, the problem with remote working, there's been a lot of loss of trust. And so as a result of that, organizations are filling people's calendars with meetings. And instead of having group syncs, there's all these one-on-one meetings. And so you have all the leadership and managers and people just going to lots and lots of meetings. But when are you meant to get stuff done? And in the good old days, we'd go to the office, we'd drink coffee and shoot the breeze, we'd do a daily scrum, and then we'd grind it for 6 hours building stuff. We'd stop for lunch. That was it. And basically it was sweet, right? You could just go in there and you'd hang out and you'd be in the office. So there were none of the wonderful temptations. I'm not sure about you, but my study is full of little temptations to tempt me away from focus. Gadgets, phones, books, people in my house that want to talk to me. How very dare they? Take the dog for a walk. You can do some personal admin, right? So you could chuck a load of washing on or do a household chore. And I think we're all working longer because it's not a case of fronting up to an office and going, right, I do my 9 to 5, I grind it and do my half-hour lunch break, all good. Because we're doing all this other stuff, we think, oh, well, I better do this or that to make sure I do my hours or get work done. And also because I'm spending most of my time on calls, I don't have any time to actually deliver some value. So I have to do that on top of it. So I think we need to rethink how we're doing remote working and really trust our people just to get stuff done. Give them their day back, let them block half their day out of like just getting stuff done, and respect their calendars. And that's something it drives me absolutely balmy. When people will book a meeting over time that you've already scheduled for something else. I think it's disrespectful. I think it's arrogant, and it's not helpful. Like, your failure to plan is not my reason to panic.
I like that. I like that statement. And indeed, like you say, the fact that people don't see other people. They think like, okay, we need to find ways. And sometimes it's also one of the managers I worked with a year or two ago said like, but normally when I would be in the office, I walk around and I could see people that need help, but I could jump in. Now I don't see it. So what do I do when I'm at home? So I contact people all the time because that's how I think I can bring value. But unfortunately, they're basically random out checking out people, and they're not helping out the people that need help, and the people that they're interrupting, they might not need help. And then it's a circle or a loop that doesn't help in many different ways, I would say.
But it's almost like Heisenberg, right? Because the system under observation behaves differently to the system without observation. And so you can either know where something is or where it's going, but not both.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
As soon as I talk to you, I've just interrupted your flow. And if you're doing a complex, particularly like all the teams I work with, and I don't work with just IT teams anymore, I work with legal teams or procurement teams, or, I've had work with so many different things. It's like, and they're dealing with complex stuff. And when your head is in the depths of a complex problem, you don't want to wind your head out of it, because as soon as you put that mental model down, it's going to be harder to pick it up, because you're building the mental model while you're playing with it. And if you put it down, if you break that flow, then it's just you
have to start all over again. And
so that's what I learned about remote working. We need to trust our people and work with them to find out ways to ask for help, to give and get help, to build trust. And I think there needs to be some balance where we can bring people together. And there's a cool book, A Year Without Pants. There's the discussion of joining WordPress, which is very much a remote culture, and they're truly globally distributed. And one of the cool things they did is they bring people together and just let them hang out and deliver, but they really hung out like they were in each other's pockets for a week.
Yeah, it was like they bring them to resort that's typically off season, and so as a company they can rent the resort or the hotel very cheaply, because basically there's no guests on holiday, and they literally hang out and they can work together, and they what Scott Birkin explained in his book, it's really wonderful. And he's he was looking. I follow Scott. I don't know if it's Twitter or Instagram or LinkedIn. I don't remember. But he said at some point, what could be a good book to rewrite or to have a second edition? And I vowed for, let's have we go back to that book as, okay, what if we learn? Because that was a book written pre-COVID. Mm-hmm. I know he went back at some point later on. And it would be really interesting to see, okay, how has the world evolved, and what did you learn about remote work since you've been there? Because that was a company created for remote work in the way they're working, but still they also had been challenged and working. And I think indeed COVID was a moment that we were not allowed to meet, so it was a different kind of remote. Bringing people together is important, but again, like in COVID, it was not possible. And these days, working with people who are in Ukraine, in Lviv, in Ukraine, a lot of these people can't leave their country, because if they leave, they can never go back, so that is living in a war zone. That's a different problem on its own. But just not being able to meet these people is really bad because of what you just described. You want to be able from time to time to meet people and create that trust and say, okay, how are we going to collaborate in one way or another? And somehow I'm convinced that it is possible to create trust remotely, but it takes much more energy, it takes much more time, it's much more deliberate kind of action. And like you say, we're somehow in a world where most of the managers by default don't trust people, and then it's the opposite. Like, no, wait, you have to recreate the trust yourself. It's also one of the things, even after all the agile coaching and everything I've done, that even I struggle with, because I do trust the people, but how do you radiate it? And it's something that is not always easy to bring. So do you have any tips of what you can do on doing that remotely?
While you were highlighting all of that, another thing popped up in my brain. I'm a really bad Slack user. I'm a user of social media, and I hate Slack because it grates seeing numbers of outstanding messages I haven't read, and every time I open it up I lose hours, so I just don't open it.
Okay, so just like other people, just like my children don't open email and things like that, so you don't open Slack.
I'm old. You want me, you email me, you WhatsApp me. That's how you get in touch with me. And what I've done is I've built a canvas, a working with me canvas. In that canvas, you get to describe your contact mechanisms, your protocols, your preference, what grinds your gears, what brings you joy, what gets you out of bed. And it's okay to say money. We got to pay a mortgage, right? We all got to eat. And if it's only money, that's great. I love mercenaries because they're honest, right?
Right.
A mercenary is so much more reliable than a crusader, because a crusader is chasing after a windmill. Like, they're the Don Quixote. Whereas a mercenary, it's just like, give me the task, I'll just go and get it done. I'll rack them and stack them and just go on. I love working with contractors like that, because they're just like, I just want to do my stuff. I'm really, really, really good. You want a ninja? Here I am. Get me this. And you go and do that. And they go, right, next. You done that? Yeah, of course I have. Boom, done.
Wow. Okay. You talked, because you skimmed almost over it, like you said you created some, I forgot the word you said, but it reminded me of a tool that I know that's called Manual of Me, but you have some kind of thing. So what do you use for that kind of thing?
It's just a PDF. I use Miro, so I put a PDF where each team member populates the canvas. It's inspired with the manual of me. It's like a classic canvas type thing where you just answer different questions. And like every canvas that we've ever used in the Agile world, it's not what's on the canvas, it's the discussion around it that we're after.
Exactly.
So standard canvas health warning, don't have to answer the questions, make your own up, just use it as inspiration, crack on with it. Everyone fills it out, and then you build a team working agreement. But having that conversation, like you and I having that conversation now you'll know that it's like, why is Simon never on Slack? Oh, that's right, he doesn't open it up. Okay, cool. He's already told me that, so I'm not going to get upset when he doesn't read my Slack message.
Well, there is probably companies that where it wouldn't work, but that of course you don't want to work for them and they don't want to work with you. But that is something that I assume when people would hire you, you might tell them like, look, that's something that doesn't work with me. I need other kind of tools or other kind of ways of reaching out to me.
If I'm told that is the organizational standard, and this is, I think it's really important as Agile coaches, most of the organizations we work with, they're not holocracies. And this is one of the things I find very challenging when people think, oh, we're doing Agile, I can do whatever I want. It's like, no. You're working within organizations. There's boundaries, controls, and constraints that you have agreed by joining the organization. And if there's a tool stack to be used, suck it up and get on with it, right? I'm really not interested in a debate. If you've joined an organization and they're saying, like if I start coaching an organization, they say we use Slack, I'll use Slack, because that's not in my mandate to dictate to my client how they're going to communicate. But I'm just saying, like, there's lots of Agile coaching groups and communities that are on Slack that I just don't engage with using that.
Yeah, but I'm really glad that you added that, because basically what you're saying is, okay, I don't work with that in a community style, but if my customer demands a certain way of working, okay, that's definitely not up to you, and especially not joining them. Maybe a couple of years down the road when people start trusting you, when you can say, okay, you know what, that Slack thing, I might know a better way depending on how things are moving, and then might listen, but definitely not on the first day that you're joining. That's for sure.
But the customer is always right in matters of taste. It's really right. It's not the customer is always right. The customer is always right in matter of taste, and that includes tooling. And if you're working in an enterprise, there's tooling, right? It's, you know, whether it's Azure DevOps or Jira, people are going to hate them, target process. The thing I'm going to push at is, can you please not lock it down so we can use the damn thing?
Yeah, okay.
Then I go to war with ops. It's like, no, I need edit rights. Like, come on, no, stop putting the user story template in the description field, for crying out loud. Like, that's so 1980s. You knock it on the head already. That's coaching challenge, right? That's organization, consulting, all that cool stuff.
But that's not about the tool, but that's how to use the tool, and that's actually part of the coaching engagement, I would say.
And that's organizational impediment, right? That's stuff we go after. But yeah, so have I answered your question?
Oh yeah, definitely, because we moved in again in multiple kind of ways about remote working, and I think we've covered it from multiple angles. So it's definitely the kind of thing I was looking for, and because that's one of the things I've already noticed. Sometimes people, what are you looking for? It's like, no, I want to have this kind of conversation because it shows multiple angles on these things. There's, just like you said earlier on about Agile, there is no right or wrong. It's like, okay, how do we tweak it and what kind of style? And yeah, I really love your answer about the customer is always right in matters of taste, because that's and I never link that to the tooling, but yeah, I agree on these kind of things.
I've got a foundational model I use, which will probably help unlock my way of thinking, like to explain it to other people. And I think I use a bull ring model, and in the middle of the bull ring, the 3 circles, in the middle is purpose. We need to communicate our purpose, and that's like the Toyota North Star. What we're doing and how we're going to do it is what I deem to be the purpose. So we're going to build a product in an agile way. That would be a purpose. This is the product, and we'll blah, blah, blah. The next ring out is constraints. And this is where most organizations really let themselves down. And we need to define the constraints. So what are the operational boundaries I have to work within? Jocko Willink does a great job at explaining this in Extreme Ownership and the dichotomy of leadership, and David Marquet talks it in Turn Your Ship Around. This constraint, these boundaries, we need to know where my decision limits are. This is your finger policy that we were talking about earlier in the
Exactly.
Right? That's a constraint. And then the third ring is trust. And we have to work on growing trust. And there's a great book on this, The Speed of Trust by Stephen M. Covey. Like, trust has a financial and business implication. The more we trust, the faster things get done, the less bureaucracy, the safer we are, right? If your partner is driving, you can fall asleep, right? Because you trust them. Whereas for your child that's just learning, you probably want to be awake for that.
Exactly. Well, I've just been to on a holiday where for the first time with 4 people who can drive, and actually because I teach 2 of my oldest boys now to drive, and they're doing it for more than a year, and I've teach them. I feel much more comfortable. Like, okay, I can sleep. Where my partner didn't teach them, and for her it's like still like okay, and so it's a little bit harder. But I think. Exactly, and I think we're both at the level that we do trust them at the level, and like you say, the very first months, even after getting the driving license, it might still feel a little bit shaky. But now I'm like, okay, yeah, that was really it brought us so much joy and so much freedom. Like, hey, now instead of 2 people driving when we go to from Belgium to Italy, now we have 4 people who can drive, and actually only every 200, 300 kilometers someone else is picking up, and yeah, it's basically so much easier to do that because of that trust that is there. And the speed it brought, because we don't have to wait, or I'm not that tired the next day and everything, because we all drove like only, I think, maximum 300 kilometers, something like that, and still we ended up where we needed to end up. So even in that example, it brought us speed, and it brought us so much more. So thanks for bringing that. And you mentioned a couple of books: Extreme Ownership, Turn the Ship Around, The Speed of Trust. All 3 books that I really love at multiple levels. The one thing that surprised me a little bit is that you put trust at the outer side, where for me, I have the feeling a lot of that starts on the inner side, but maybe it's the difference on how you look at that. So, why would you start with purpose? Could you say some more about that?
That common connection is absolutely critical, and trust is earned. Trust is you don't give trust away naively or cheaply. People have to earn trust. Now, I'll give you a little bit of credit. It's like I give everyone a base level of credit of trust, that I'm assuming that you're competent and you'll act in a fair manner with integrity. Now, the minute you demonstrate a lack of competence or a lack of integrity, you've just damaged your trust balance. Now, the key thing we need to do, particularly as organizational coaches, as agile coaches, we need to connect into the business, because we're not running a creche for adults. This isn't the early learning center.
Exactly.
We're here to deliver value, well, one way or the other. So it's either a capitalist value, in which case we're looking for a balance sheet to go up. It could be a social value if we're working for a governmental organization. We could be working for a healthcare provider, or, something like that. We could be working for a really significant risk-based industry, in which case we need to be connected to that purpose. And that then leads us to our decision boundaries and constraints. And this is really important. I picked this up from the work by Jocko. We need to understand where our boundaries are, so that we can delegate to our team. Now, if we don't know where our boundaries are, I can't delegate, right? I cannot give you aegis or control over something that is not in my gift to give you.
Yeah.
So I need to know edges of my sandpit. If I come and work for you and you're my manager, I need to say, where's my boundaries? Can I hire people? Can I fire people? Can I spend? Can I buy tools? What is it? Where's my boundary? And because I've never worked for you, you'll probably be quite tight on those boundaries and go, you've got no budget, you can't hire, you can't fire, you use the tool set that we got, and I just want to see you ship something. Until then, shut up, stay in your lane and get some work done. And I'm like, yeah, fair dues. I need to demonstrate my competence and integrity to you and then I might come like, do you know what? I've been working with you for 6 months now. I've been observing the team. I think if we brought in tool X, it could help us achieve Y. And then it's a discussion or collaborator, because now we're on that gray area of the constraint that I'm coming to you with a model.
I like that.
I've earned the trust to start bending the constraints because I have demonstrated my commitment to our alignment on common purpose. And then it becomes a feedback loop, and that's why I put trust at the outer ring.
I like that. For me, the part where trust is earned, I think we're more or less on the same level, but not fully, in the sense that I give indeed everybody some level of trust, but of course I won't give the full level of trust, because indeed it's so I prefer to give a little more trust than people have the right to have, but then everything else is the exact same thing. The moment you fail on that, trust is removed, much more than always earned. But I have the feeling that when I give some more trust, that people kind of want to show that they are allowed to do that. But yeah, that I feel that there is a lot there in common. What I really loved about the other part, where I want to dive a little more attention to, is that I can indeed not delegate something that I don't own myself. So if I'm not trusted by my manager, I definitely cannot delegate it to you. And that has nothing to do with me not trusting the people below me, but more like, okay, that's just not into my boundaries. Like, I don't have that power. And that brings so much, how would I say it? That is so much reality in so many companies, that people feel like, oh, my manager doesn't trust me. But actually, if you look back, it's like, oh, there is actually that chain of control that somehow that company does, and that tells us a lot. So very, very powerful thing to think about. Okay, I want to move to that next question. What is a book that you have read? And I think you had a couple of books, so let's what's the first book you want to talk about?
The first one I want to talk about is a direct correlation to your previous point about you cannot spend what you haven't got, and that's the Dictator's Handbook. I think it's
I was kind of expecting that one would be the first one. So this is indeed, that's the book, I think.
Yes.
But I'll move you around here. So indeed, I was when I saw that book, that's a book that I haven't read and I don't know. So I'm really curious, because when I read Dictators, like what are we going to talk about? So yeah, I'm really looking forward to learn about this book.
The beautiful thing about this book, all power systems are based on 3 groups. And I'm going to get these wrong unless I quickly get up the summary. But basically, there's 3 groups. There's the electorate, the selectorate, and then there's the ruling body. So the electorate are the ones who choose the people who select the king or queen, the ruler. And so in a modern democracy, the electorate is nominally every citizen if they choose to vote. Interestingly enough, in these times of populist politics, a lot of people are disengaged and not voting. And that's why it was beautiful to see the French elections recently, because there was a mobilization between the first round and the second round of the French elections. So that was an interesting example of the electorate mobilizing to actually have their voice heard. And the French are wonderful at making sure their voice are heard. You then have the selectorate, which are the people that choose the ultimate authority and power. And so if we're thinking of a classic company, that will be the people who select the CEO. If we're talking about a political example, it will be those who choose the prime minister. And like, unfortunately, I'm living in the UK, and we've had more prime ministers than hot dinners in the last 8 years. It's sort of like, well,
yeah, you can say that there's been
it's been a revolving circus of clowns, and that's where we, the electorate, have had the naivety to vote in a selectorate that was fundamentally incompetent, and then they just voted for cronies that would line their pockets, allegedly. But like, during COVID, we lost something like £7 billion was spent on cronies of the government at the time.
Wow,
no check.
That's a lot of money.
It's significant. So anyway, so that's how politics works. Now, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about your local scout group, your homeowners association, your local government, your whatever. Whenever we get that, there's a group of people who choose the people who choose the ruler. Now, once you become ruler, you are then able to support the selectorate, the people who are going to keep you there. And at its crudest format, we can have tyrannies where the dictator is then able to line the pockets of his cronies and stay in there forever. So, Zimbabwe, under Mugabe, classic. Just line the pockets, stay in power, right? And this is where you'll often end up with a ruthless control of the electorate. And then you have the alleged democracies where there's other ways of doing it. So why do I think this is important for an agilist to read? I think a lot of agilists are tarred with the brush that we're somewhat overly optimistic or Pollyanna-ish, where we see everything, it's all like unicorns and rainbows and happy world. This is a brutal book about real politic. And I think we as Agile coaches need to be very, very knowledgeable about how social systems work and how organizations work. And so this is why I'd encourage everyone to read it, just to get a bit of a jolt and make sure that they're grounded and connected. So when you're working with an organization, you're very careful about how you behave so that you can influence change. Because if the leadership and the selectorate are not willing to support you, all Agile adoption will fail. Where I've seen the best example of this, the selectorate and the leader of the organization was very committed to the Agile adoption, and it was very successful at a global multinational company. So leadership are in, you're successful. Leadership not committed, you'll make some change, but it will not be systemic or sustainable.
I really like that. It's I really like also how when you said about the different kind of elections. So for example, Belgium is one of these countries where we have to vote. So there's it's not like you choose to vote, you have to vote. You can still go into the voting booth and do nothing with your vote, but you have to get into that voting booth.
Okay.
And so it's completely different, as in many other countries. There were some, when I was young, when I was like 18, I was like, why do we have to? But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I can definitely see value in, because, it will somehow, maybe I'm just naive, but I think at least when people get in there, that most people will then at least take the decency to think about what they want to vote on, and not just say, okay, I'm going to stay in my bed, not vote, and then be disappointed afterwards that the wrong person's won or whatever. It's like, okay, I take more of my responsibility. Might be wrong. I know at some point they said, okay, let's revert that. And I think if we look what's happening in the US, where one party is actually trying to unregistered people who want to vote, and others like, okay, that's kind of going in a certain direction where I'm not sure that is healthy. But then we go into a very different kind of thing. But it's interesting to look at, it's not just you as voters, but it's actually we're selecting people who will then make a decision, and then
But that's a
how
classic example of power in action, right? And
Mhm.
once you have, so at that moment, the Republicans are controlling they're the selectorate. Now,
Mhm.
the interesting thing is that the English were the first to do it, and there's a technical word for it, and it's called gerrymandering, where you rig the electoral system to make sure that your kind of people get voted in next.
Exactly, and that's
Many, many years ago, I was traveling in Norway, and I was there for an election day, and I couldn't get a drink. Like being Australian, love a beer. You couldn't get a beer because it was election day, and they're not allowed to serve. I think you could serve a light beer, but they weren't allowed to serve anything else because people were, politicians are going to people and saying, "Look, if you vote for me, I'll buy you a beer, or I'll buy you a whiskey or something."
wow.
Expensive. So it's just a regulatory control. And this is one of the things. Once people get in power, they'll do everything they can do to protect their power base. Have a look at North Korea. Have a look at various other places. I don't want to touch on geopolitics, so this will go even on longer.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's interesting. Well, interesting or sad, I don't know, to see how similar kind of powers are playing out in different kind of countries to all get. And like you say, people who are in power one way or another want to keep in that power, and and that we see the same thing in companies. I think it's
Reading 1984, right?
exactly. It's
War is peace, ignorance is strength. It's terrifying.
and well, when I needed to read this at school, I never thought it could turn up into a kind of manual. It was supposed to be a warning for a war, for a world, and not really as.
But they stopped it, and I think that's one of the reasons we're in a bit of the mess we're in. Is they stopped teaching it at school, and so people and are not looking for that. And this is the reason we should be reading Brave New World. We should reading V for Vendetta and Mouse. Like, if you don't want to read the book, go and read Mouse. It's a great comic book. Terrifying.
Yeah. It's and I think there's a couple of movies and other kind of things that bring. I'm thinking about the one I saw in school that my daughter had to see again this year. Wave about similar kind of experiments happening in a school to teach people, to teach students about what happened in World War II. And it creates discussions, and I think that's the important part. That is things. Okay, we've been talking about one book and multiple kind of things. Do you still want to mention the other book?
I'd love to just give a very quick shout out to Marcus Aurelius' Meditations.
That's the one, I think.
That's the one.
At least
Marcus Aurelius was recognized as one of the last great Roman emperors. And the interesting thing about Meditations is he wrote his essays not for wider, broader consumption, but for his own. It was a personal tool of reflection. And he comes from the Stoic mindset, where there's really three core aspects to Stoic thought, which is virtue in itself is a good. So if we live lives of integrity, of making the world a better place for other people, that in itself is a very noble and good end. And it is self-rewarding. The second thing is always be perspective. And this is why I draw strength from it, because I'm quite passionate about things. I can become emotional, and I need to ground myself and be more perspective and more reflective on things. And then this acceptance of fate, of mortality, of planning for it, being accepting of suffering and loss as part of the wonderful dynamism of the human condition. And the way our brains are worked, the way social media, modern systems, algorithms causing dopamine addiction, causing infatuation with youth. We need to respect the whole voyage of humanity. And I think it really touched me. I read it at a time where every one of those lessons really spoke to me. And I think it's good to read and reflect on things like that, particularly as agile coaches, because we impact a lot of other people, and how we show up impacts other people. And we have to be very mindful how we show up.
Yeah, I agree, and yeah, I think a lot of the things we discussed earlier on in this episode is actually about showing up and how do we want to show up. I think that's haven't read that book, but I do think that at least, well, I didn't study Latin, but my two of my children did, and I know that a lot of these things they love to discuss. And well, we literally went to Italy this summer because they asked for, and that's an interesting thing. The children, being mostly the 21 and the 6-year-old, they asked for a cultural holiday and not a swimming pool holiday, which is in itself already very interesting as a children to ask that. And I think it's stimulated by that kind of education and these kind of things to learn about that, more about that kind of culture. So yeah,
That's wonderful.
this is why I wanted to state, because then it's also publicly, and I will probably not forget. Well, I doubt I will forget myself anyway. I want to move to, for me, one of the most interesting questions, especially after a conversation that long, is that what's a question do you think I should also ask you, and what's the answer?
I thought about this one, and it's a little bit of shameless promotion of a topic that I think is really important. The question I think you should ask is, what's up with lean agile procurement?
And so what's up with that?
So there's a wonderful fellow called Mirko Kleiner, and he's come up with this idea of applying lean agile techniques to procurement, which then allows us to build a cross-functional team when we're bringing in other departments, organizations to create lean agile ecosystems. That means that we're thinking about agile contracts. That means that we're building agile partnerships. And in that way, we can establish a foundation of agility across businesses. And this is a really wonderful thing. And I think it's the next evolution, because a lot of these folks don't even know about Agile. So whilst in the IT world, everyone's like, oh, Agile's dead. In legal, compliance, risk, and procurement, they're like, what's this Agile thing? Because it hasn't got to them. And part of the reason Agile's dead is the partner that your company has employed is probably using a very classic prescriptive contract where there isn't flexibility. They're not looking for backlogs. There isn't adaptation. The contract's not reviewed. So basically, they're trying to do Agile, or they're trying to have a fight with their hands tied behind their back. And so we can liberate our partners that we work with to be self-organizing and adaptive in the way that we want our organization to be self-organizing and adaptive. World's going to be a better place, right?
Exactly. And I think, that's it's already in the manifesto. Like, we want more the collaboration than the contract negotiations in a way. And I think that's, I so much love how you say that we're so much have our hands tied behind our back, because somehow in a contract it says this has to be delivered in that kind of way. And every time you want to, how would I say it, want to deliver something that brings more value, it's seen as a contract breach, where actually they don't always realize that, hey, this is on purposely done to bring value to you as a customer. No, it's like, wait, we can keep to the contract and deliver exactly what you're asking, but that's not what you need. It's
what about if we wrote contracts with the anticipation that they would be updated at each sprint review, because the contract is a living artifact. Most contracts are written as one and done, and there's a yearly procurement cycle, and they're terrible. And then you end up with, like, I was in this situation with this huge multinational where they used a reversed sealed auction because it was all about the money, not about the value. And so we lost the professional Scrum training to an organization that would deliver training with a cert, but not delivered by professional Scrum trainers. So they were buying two different things were being sold, right? Because
exactly.
So they're saying, oh, okay, one of you is offering a Mercedes G-Wagon, like one of the, like go everywhere, do everything, really solid, great four-wheel drive car. The other of you is offering a Trabant. Yeah, they're both cars, but totally different levels of quality and build, etc. So, but that wasn't.
Again, it depends on what you want and what kind of thing you want, and yeah, it might be that the other one, because it's much, or assuming that it's cheaper to build, that might be the one that you needed. But again, that we need to look at.
Let's bring all that out into the open. Let's be transparent. Let's have an open conversation. Let procurement engage within their organization, going, do we really need to buy this? Because that's the other thing I've seen, is where stuff's bought where it didn't need to be, or people are buying things and then telling procurement to clean the mess up later on. Let's get them engaged. Let's just, can we please have risk, compliance, and procurement and finance engaged in the discussion much earlier as a cross-functional team using good lean agile techniques, please?
Exactly, and that's I've worked a couple of years ago in a bank to do exactly some similar with legal and procurement, and it's already interesting that some companies have 3 different kind of departments to do all kind of legal stuff and all different kind of reasons to have multiple departments. But yeah, and I think we can go on for a very long time discussing these things, but I think, yeah, it's good that people realize that actually multiple parts of the agile communities are thinking about, because it's I think there's quite a couple of people who do work on what does it mean to have an agile contract. It's needed. I think it's a nice example when you say that people think it's gone or agile is dead or whatever. Actually, indeed, when you look at things like agile contracts, I know quite a couple of people thinking about what does that actually mean, and that's nice, because it's yet another step of on how we get to a more agile world. Because when this whole thing started out, it was just a development team on its own, and I think by now we realize that that's the easy stuff. I mean, getting that off, and I still see companies doing it wrong for all kind of reasons. But the biggest constraint is almost never the development part. It's a lot of things around it, and we talked about work in progress, having company. There's no company that has no more IDs than they have money. I mean, it is like, and the bigger a company wants, the bigger a company becomes, the more IDs they have. And the IDs grow faster than the number of money, because the more people you have, the more people have IDs, and guess what? That is a lot of more things to do. And somehow people seem to think, or at least I have the feeling that people think, oh, once we grow, it will be easier, because then we'll have more people to deal with it. Yeah, but then you also have more IDs, so actually in reality it becomes harder, because instead of easier.
But that's the function of the human condition, right? But, as soon as X happens, I'm going to be happier, safer, stronger, better. But no, now is the right time. And this is where I think we as agilists need to really push our clients, our customers, and ourselves to be absolutely ruthless on value while being compassionate with people. And demand will always outstrip supply. So let's get better at having that no conversation. No, we're not doing that. The juice ain't worth the squeeze. Not doing it. What about this? No. What about that? No. What about that one? Oh, that one's a good one. What about that? Well, not sure. What's the cheapest experiment we can run to see whether it's worth it? And let's iterate on that. And if we can build this learning culture and that real openness and that comfort to challenge and saying, look, this thing that we thought was going to go well isn't working well because, look, these metrics are going all the wrong way. We better park this or turn it off or whatever, because that's not good, right? Okay, well, let's do that. That frees our people up to go and work on something else. Google are awesome at this. What is it? The stuff Google killed? There's the website of all the wonderful ideas that Google have just...
There's a couple of websites like that, because Microsoft has a similar kind of website and a couple of others. But I think as a customer, I sometimes hate it because Google killed quite a few projects that I was really happy to using. But as a company, I like the idea because indeed, like you say, we need to have, we need to be able to focus and say, you know what, that doesn't bring us any value. As a customer, like Google Reader and a couple of other things, I'm still like, I wish they at least sold it or found it some other way. But as a company, I do fully understand that that need.
It's never fun being in the 3%, right?
Exactly. That's but yeah, thanks for bringing that up because I think that question and everything around it brings so much value of thinking at that kind of level. I think that is so important, and it shows also why the statement "agile is dead" it focuses on one part, but it ignores so many other things. And there might be, or it might feel true for these people, but they kind of ignore what a lot of other things are happening. And it usually doesn't help us to focus on some of that negative part.
I think you've just inspired a thought on me. I think Agile theatre is dead.
I saw something similar like that being published yesterday. Like, okay, a lot of the things, the fake agile or a lot of that other things. It's agile in its core might actually be much more active, but there's a lot of people who joined the agile, I don't know, community or not even that don't fully understand, and where it's indeed much more theater and much more wrong kind of way. And now we're going back to the core. That's something I've heard quite a few times already, the couple of months and in different kind of ways. Okay, I want to move to that actually very last question. Who do you think I should invite next? And I think you also had a couple of people in mind that you wanted to bring out.
Yeah. So 3 ladies I've got a lot of admiration and respect for. First one, a lady who helped me on my Agile journey, and she helps a lot of people on their Agile journey. And that's Daphne Harris from Scrum.org.
And I think this is her, if I'm correct.
Daphne. Yeah. So
this was a big risk because of originally I couldn't find her picture, and it's been
that's Daphne. Daphne looks after the PST community and has since I was joined with Scrum.org in 2010. She helps people on their journey to become professional Scrum trainers, and she really lives a lot of the values. And she's one of these people that has worked so hard behind the scenes to help Agile be so successful. So I think I'd love to hear her answers to a lot of these questions.
Thank you for bringing that, because indeed, sometimes, like we said, these communities, they are built by people who work on the communities, and of course, part of the community is the people like yourself who are giving the trainings and a lot of other things. But there is always, and we shouldn't forget, there's always people behind either the Scrum Alliance, Scrum.org, Agile Alliance, and whatever. These are run also by people who do understand, or I would think most of them. There might be a few exceptions, but I would say most of them do fully understand what Agile means, and do it at a different level, because that's the other interesting part that, how would I say it? Building such a kind of business or community is completely different than building software. And at the same time, it's really is important. Yeah,
it's tricky.
It's
because my collective noun for a group of agilists is an argument. So as soon as you get 2 or 3 agilists together, you now have an argument of agilists.
Yeah, that I'm trying to think the PSL training I did with Jerry Weinberg and a couple of others. One of the things that Jerry said there was like the hardest people to coach or to facilitate is a bunch of agile coaches, and it was like, yeah, I so recognize that. It's yeah, and even if it just like, yeah, but this facilitation technique is better, and it's like that doesn't even matter. I mean, like, yeah. So we all have opinions on lots of yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely recognizable. You had still had two other names, so let's bring these two.
Did you put Stephanie or Sophie next?
And I did put Stephanie next. Actually, I tried to follow the order that you gave them to me.
Cool. Right.
So that is.
Stephanie is my co-author. She's a wonderful trainer, coach, consultant. Lives the values. Just got a really different perspective coming from across the pond. So when we were writing the book, it was such a good creative friction. So yeah.
Fiction. That was a kind of nice miss wording.
So she's done a lot of work with women in Agile, and I think representation. I deliberately chose 3 women because I think they're underrepresented, and unfortunately, I fall into that greater demographic that we see a lot of on conferences and talks and stuff of middle-aged white bloke
from a Western country, and yeah, that's for me one of the desires when I started out with Who's Agile to make sure that at least 50% of the people who are on the show are women. And then I'm not even counting the duos and the non-binary people. So I'm just from the category men, women, I make sure that it's 50%, and we're at 55 or at 50, I don't know, 50.1 or something like that percent. And it's hard because by default, a lot of people might propose men. Also women, that's interesting. Sometimes it's women saying, yeah, we are underrepresented, and then they send me 3 men. It's like, well, we want to, and some they don't realize it. And when I point it out, then it's like, oh, and then I get back a list of 10 women. But yeah, it's something, it's a conscious action to really take. And so I want to thank you for that, because it's, people don't always realize that it should be a conscious action. And it's not just like the way you talked about these women, or the 2 right now, because there's still 1 left, that they think that it's, that it's undervalued. But the way you just talked about them, it's very clear that also is about quality. So there's no lesser quality, because we do pay attention to more diversity. It's just that these people usually don't get the attention that they do deserve. And yeah,
it's an interesting gender bias that often women are more self-effacing than men. Like, there's statistics and data out there that says that women will not apply for jobs they're qualified for because they may not think they're qualified for it where they are, whereas a lot of men will apply for jobs that they're underqualified for, knowing that they'll sort of blag their way once they get it. And so it's an interesting thing. Very
and I
weird.
see the same thing here when I sent an email, like, and it's exaggerating. But the default reply of men is almost something like, "Where have you been?" or "Why are you only mailing me?" And the most default reaction of women is like, "Do I really belong here? Why do you think I should be there?" And again, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but just a little bit. It's actually. With most men, it's like almost immediate action, like yes. And with women, it's at least 2 to 3 emails before they say yes. And it's mostly, and if it's about, okay, it's not a priority, that's something else. But with most women, it's like, yeah, do you really think I belong? And why should I be? And So I see this even in a community project like this. And we're not even talking about jobs and anything. So yeah, I've heard that statistics, and even I was blown away. And then we're still talking about white people. If we're talking about people of color, it's an extra level, both with men and then again another level with women of color. So yeah.
Drop another book here is I read it over lockdown. It's White Fragility, which helped me reflect and think about my own inherent cultural biases and made me be much more aware of what it's like to grow up, in a family that never had to worry about food on the table, not in a war zone, white, English speaking, university education. It's just like tick, 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 tick. It's from such a position of bias and generosity to assume that everyone else has had that. Whereas I'm now far more appreciative of the head start that I had through the happenstance of my birth, right? And it's pure, genetic.
Exactly. And I've actually read a couple of similar kind of books, just like this book. I have a list of these on my website about, a lot of that we can learn as, especially as white males, about all the. In Dutch, there is a book that's called The Seven Checks, and basically it says, okay, by default. And there is another book that's I'm trying to find it, Better Allies, that is there. It's their one, where the author talks about all the different kind of privileges that we have. She has a list, I think, of 50. And and it also shows very clearly, like, a lot of people have a lot of the privileges, also women, also black people, they or colored people, they have some of these privileges. But white male like me have like maybe 30 or 35 of the 50, not everything, but it kind of shows that the more you have, the easier your life is. And it's it's very hard to realize that. It's only when you encounter places where you have less privilege, and of course, getting older is one of the places where you then see, okay, I might be this. It's already. I think I was 45 the first time I was in an interview that they said, "Well, we think you're too old." I was like, "Really? Okay." Wow. Already now, I was kind of expecting that at 55 or 60, and I was like, okay. But that was for the first time. I was like, wow. And they were blunt out telling me, so that was like, what about the other times that they don't tell me? And of course, I'm just lucky that it's only one of these things. And I think this is really important to indeed make people much more aware about all the privileges that we have at multiple levels. And I think that's is really important to bring out, because the fact that, well, if I don't dare to bring these out, the people that don't have these privileges have even a harder time. Because for them, when they bring it out, people look even negative on some of that.
We need to get them. We need to make it more comfortable for them to join a space.
Exactly, and
to hear their voices.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Okay, we talked already about two women. There was a third one that you wanted to bring up.
Sophie Durand is Agile
That's
coach.
her?
Yeah,
I think
she's on the board of the Lean Agile Procurement Alliance, and Sophie's a wonderful Agile coach, a Lean Agile practitioner, and does fantastic work, and has worked with some amazing organizations, and showing my very British bias, like French culture is very difficult to hack. Like if you can affect change within a French culture, that's a completely different style and way of doing things to an English speaking culture. Did I get away with that?
Yeah, I can definitely understand. Well, I've worked from Belgium. Being in Belgium, I do speak some French, and I did work about a year in Bordeaux, which is the south of France. Um, I've been talking a lot of times already, actually, in the Agile community in Paris. Um, and I think it sometimes I also see that sometimes there is more cultural differences between different departments than just the country differences. But at the same time, yeah, we should recognize, and there is the other book that's, yeah, you can't see it from here, but there's a book that's called, I need to look at the title exactly, Adopting Agile Across Borders, where I've interviewed both of the authors as well, which is really good to show like the differences between cultures and how agile is different in these kind of cultures. So yeah, that's
Yeah, is that with David and Claudia?
exactly, yeah. It's and yeah, it's wonderful to learn about how these styles can influence, the cultures can influence, and yeah, it's good to realize these differences. And again, once we have enough empathy and we can take the time to build trust, I think a lot of that things are possible. But if we just consider that, oh, it's just this, well, no, the cultures are different and we have to respect these cultural difference before we can achieve something. Because of course, if we don't respect their culture, why would they respect um, our agile culture? Let's put it like that. I mean,
But
um,
I think it ties us all the way back, right back to the start of the conversation. It comes to values, right? And unless we live
mhm,
the values of focus, openness, respect, courage, and commitment, we're not going to build the trust to have any sort of movement at all. And without trust,
exactly.
we cannot communicate effectively.
Oh no, and I think that's, and yeah, I think, well, it's an example I sometimes give that if I go to conference and if I have an argument with my partner just before leaving, then I know from a distance it's almost impossible to recreate that trust. Where if we're when I leave, we have a good conversation and everything's fine. Basically, we don't need to communicate a lot when I'm in the other country. Things keep flowing because there's a lot of trust. But if something's broken on the day I leave or that last conversation, then I better not communicate at home because I know that things won't matter. And then I might, and that's of course something I've learned over the years that, okay, I know it's not nice. And so okay, now I know I will try to make sure that when I leave, that we actually leave on good faith and good trust. But of course, it's never easy to predict what will happen on the day that you're leaving. But I do know that then trying to recreate that trust from a distance, even after so many years of marriage, it still is a hard time. And that's in a relationship with someone I dearly love and yeah, been together. And so doing a similar kind of stuff in a company with people that, well, let's face it, it's a different kind of relationship than of course with my partner. That's even a lot harder, of course.
So the best team I worked with was split between the UK and India. Now the most agile and highest performing team I ever worked with.
And is there anything that you've learned from that situation that you can say, this is why? Do you know?
Because there was a mutual investment to understand each other. And like I went there, the leadership went there more frequently than me, but we went there and we spent time. We, the human significance of sharing a meal, hanging out together, working together, spending time together to build and understand and grow that rapport. People moving backward and forward across the countries, building that trust, and helping them understand that they're empowered, because the culture they're working from was very hierarchical. And so encouraging them and educating them to take the empowerment we were offering them and that it was okay was really important. And they grew and flourished into that space. It was wonderful to see. It wasn't straightforward, but the investment was made and the rewards were achieved.
Exactly, and I think that brings so much full circle on a lot of the things that we talked about, because indeed it's about the investment, the trust, and everything. So that is a crucial thing, I think, in all kind of relationships. I would say all kind of that's something that I do recognize, and it's also very nice as an example, because it's not about that distance. It's not about the cultures being totally different, but it's okay. How much time do we want to invest from both sides to get it working again, and to keep working on that,
and keep it working.
And keep it working, exactly. And that's and realizing that, okay, we want to take and make that time to do a lot of that. Simon, I really want to thank you for your time, because we've been talking for a very long time. We had some technical difficulties. It took some time to figure that out, but I'm glad that we're able to solve even that. For the people that want to reach out to you, what would be a good way if they want to connect with you?
My website, the easiest way is apd.coach, and that will redirect you to advancedproductdelivery.com. That's probably the longest website ever. That's why I've got a short alias. Or you can find me on scrum.org. But they're the two easiest ways to find me.
Okay. That's so thank you. I will definitely add these links to the show notes so that people can find you from there. It's been a wonderful time. I don't know how hot it is in the UK, but here in Belgium we're close to 11 o'clock, and it still is incredibly hot. I don't dare to look. Well, I can't see the temperature that's it is outside or inside, but it still is. Very hot for an evening.
It's been one of those days. It's summer has finally arrived.
Exactly. That's the kind of word to say. It's like it took a long time. It looked like we never would get to the summer, but finally we are here in the summer. But it's been a wonderful moment to spend that hot evening with you. I really want to thank you for that. And I do hope that we might run into each other at a later moment.
I look forward to it, and I really appreciate the opportunity just to hang out for a few hours and have such a great conversation. We covered so much. It was a real joy. Thank you, Yves.
You're welcome, and thank you for that time. See you.
Thank you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.